of Selectmen of the Town of New Canaan for Tuesday, February 23rd, 2021. It is 8:32, and we have a quorum and a couple of preliminary matters. First of all, I'd like to move we amended the agenda to add an item that we put on your tablet, which is the Municipal Advisory Services Agreement. And Linda can address this when we get to it, but I move that we add that item to the agenda.
Second.
Discussion, all in favor? Okay, we'll take that up. We'll take that up after toward the end of the agenda, probably after number 7. Also, I was going to suggest that we open this up to public comment via Zoom today, rather than just take it by email. We've received a number of emails, but if you agree, I would propose we announce the Zoom number. That channel 79 has been unstable recently, and so I would move that we open up to public comment by Zoom, and I will read the Zoom number if we want to do that. Do I have a motion to do so?
So moved. Second.
Okay. So the Zoom number for those who wish to join is, the meeting ID is 815-9793-7870. That's 815-9793-7870. And the passcode is 233368. 233368. Tucker will monitor so that we don't have any shenanigans with yeah. And so I think with that, again, public comments. I'm sure the first item on our agenda are the minutes from our last meeting on February 9th. Any comments or corrections? I move we approve the minutes of that meeting. Second, Kathleen, all in favor? Okay. Public comments. Members of the public are welcome to provide comments to the Board of Selectmen on agenda topics scheduled for review and or vote. Comments ordinarily are submitted only in writing to the Board of Selectmen, but we're opening up to Zoom today. We can begin public comment, but I'm a little concerned that by the time we get to the library, I suspect most of the public comments are about the library. Could I suggest we defer the public comments until we get to that item? If anybody wants to make a public comment about anything other than the library, and you'd like my Zoom, if you would raise your hand, and we'll take that public comment now. Tucker, do you see any hands raised?
No, I don't. I would just ask that everybody mute themselves. That's helpful. But I don't see any hands.
Can you mute everybody, and then we'll open it up to people who? Yeah,
but then yes.
Raise their hand, except Nick and Kathleen and myself.
Right.
With that, let's move on to the agenda items before we get to the library item. First item is the fire department, and is Jack here to present that?
Here.
Chief Hennessy?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, it's the interlocal agreement with the Westport Fire Department to provide dispatch services for the fire department. It's an annual operating expense that is in the operating budget, and due to the figure, it needs to be approved by the Board of Selectmen.
Any questions for Jack, Nick, or Kathleen?
Chief, how long?
Jack, remind me, how many years have we been doing this?
At least 5.
Yeah. And it's still going well?
Still going very well. Yes, it is.
Any questions? Kathleen, do you have a question?
No, Nick already asked them. Thank you.
Okay. I move we approve the agreement with the town of Westport for the fire department dispatch services annual fee of $78,000. Do I have a second?
Second year.
Nick seconds. Further discussion? All in favor? That's approved.
Thank you.
Tiger is up for the clay tennis courts contract.
We're going to have John present, and then I'll add a little color if need be.
Okay.
Good morning,
Good
John.
morning. Yes, good morning. This is our annual spring maintenance work of the 8 Hartrue or clay courts down at Mead Park. We went out to requested proposals again due to the fact that we just want to make sure our numbers were in line and everything else. One of our biggest concerns that we've had in recent was the clay courts is getting them open in a timely manner. So we received RFPs from 3 companies. We'd like to go with Putnam Tennis that has done most of the work at Mead Park over the last years, last 25, 30 years. So.
Questions for John?
John, were they were the folks that opened us up last year, or was it a different group?
They have opened us up the last couple of years. And then before that, we took 2 years off and went with another company that was lower than them in price, and they went out of business. So.
Okay, thank you.
And this is the same company that opens up private clubs courts?
The three companies that we requested, yes, they open up many different private clubs. Some of them local, like I believe Rock Rimmon was on the list of other places that they open up similar to us.
May I ask what commitment we get from them regarding when they will open the courts?
That's a good question, Keith. So what we did this year was we asked for a proposed start date. We also put in our opening date, which we've always done, as to what we'd like to see. And then we incentivized the contractor with a 15% bonus if they can meet our opening date. So 15% of their bid is the incentive to open by our start date. Interestingly enough, Putnam, if we add all the numbers across the board as far as their contract, the incentive, and then our contingency, they total 18,509, excuse me, and that's actually lower than the second low bid of 18,600 before you get to the incentive and the contingency. So you're looking at the fact that we can get our, the hope is that we can get our courts open on time, and then we're still actually all in lower than the second bidder, without any incentives. We've had difficulty opening the courts, as everyone understands. And mainly it comes down to, if you can't give a penalty without a bonus, and penalties are very, very difficult to assess. So we felt we'll incentivize with a bonus and see how that goes this year. So that's our thought at the moment.
Tiger, thank you for that answer. But Keith, I remind you, you're a guest for this meeting, and guests don't get to ask questions. So
I anticipated that question from the Board of Selectmen anyway, so we figured we'd answer.
Nick or Kathleen, do you have any further questions for Tiger?
Nothing
No
here.
further.
Okay, I move we approve a contract with Putnam Tennis and Recreation LLC for $13,990 plus a contingency amount of $2420 and plus $2,099 bonus for early start time, for a total project cost of $18,509. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in
None
favor?
here.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Keith.
Thank you.
Let's move on to,
Thank
so the next item on the agenda is the police headquarters building and site evaluation services. As you know, the police department building committee has been stood up for now 3 months, and there are 2 primary architects for police department buildings, the premier firms in the Northeast, Jakunski Humes and Castle Booz. And we really didn't anticipate how this work stream should work. The one job is to evaluate what can be done with the South Avenue location by way of either renovating the current building, which is probably the worst choice, building a new building, which either means building a new building behind the existing building and repurposing the existing building, if that's possible with planning and zoning. We don't know yet what the answer is, or possibly demolishing the current building and building a new building. And that actually part of option A would be to maintain the front facade of the building and build essentially a new building behind the front facade. Option C could involve reconstructing a facade that looks like the current facade. Anyway, that's a project that since Brian Humes has been working with us for I think 20 years and knows the building, we believe Brian's the best one to do the work to analyze and evaluate and make the recommendations as to what the total cost of those three options would be at South Avenue. So we're proposing to enter into a contract to hire Brian Humes to do that project for the building committee. The second work stream is really if we want to build a new police department elsewhere, which quite honestly is my bias, because I think the expense of the South Avenue location is going to be surprising to people. We need to determine possible locations. And this is a function that really requires a lot of staff work because there are probably 6 or 7 or 8 locations in town. There may be more that could be possible locations. It requires about 2.5 acres. The town owns about 500 acres, and you'd think that we could find 2.5 acres among our 500 acres somewhere. Many of which are obviously restricted by parkland and deed restrictions and other limitations. And there's also some private properties either available or that could be available. And I was suggesting that we hire Castle Booze to work with our staff. And, you know, we have on staff about 9 staff employees that should be involved with this project, starting with Tiger and our town engineer, Maria Koplet, Joe Zagorensky, Bill Oakland for buildings, Brian Platts with the building department, our town planner, Lynn Brooks, Abney, Kathleen Holland, our inland wetlands director, the chief of police, the deputy chief of police, and our police captain, Andrew Walsh. So we have a lot of staff work to do looking at various locations. And in addition to Stuart Salabini, who declined to be a member of the building committee, but is an advisor, having long been a police commission chairman and currently our CERT director. So the idea would be to hire Castle Booze to work with our staff to investigate the possible locations. It's important we do these work streams simultaneously because Brian's going to probably take 5 or 6 weeks to complete the full analysis of South Avenue. And it'll probably take us 5 or 6 weeks to investigate other locations. At the end of this process, we would be able to choose, what can we do at South Avenue? What can we do elsewhere? We pretty much know we need a 25 or 26 or 27,000 square foot building. And so the idea would be to authorize, we have $500,000 authorized for the first phase of the building project. And I'm recommending today we authorize $50,000 to enter into contracts with Jukunsky Humes and Castle Booze to work on these two work streams. Tiger, did you answer my question about the hazardous substance analysis we have to do on South Avenue?
We were reaching out to Bill. I hadn't heard back yet as to whether or not we performed it. Joe?
So it was, there was some performed in the 80s. So what was exposed was remediated, but we'll have to do another assessment.
You know, one of the issues with a 100-year-old building is that was renovated in 81 is what materials are in that building that would be a cause for remediation. We know from the high school project that remediation can get very expensive, besides the fact that we have foundation issues and water issues with that building. So anyway, we may have to do another contract with a inspector of hazardous substances. But anyway, so that's my suggestion, that we move forward in the next few weeks with 2 work streams, one by the Police Department Building Committee working with Jukunsky Humes, and the other one with Castle Booze and our staff. Kathleen.
I think I support the idea. Wonder whether or not there'd be some value in actually having, maybe you already have this, an assigned person on the work stream 2 who's of counsel, so that you just, that maybe they don't come in for every meeting. I don't know whether that's been factored in in terms of the overall cost of $500,000, how much of that would be sort of legal considerations, review, et cetera?
Yeah, legal, we work with the town attorney on projects all the time, so.
Right, but would that be part of our retainer or a separate cost?
Well, that's a fair point. I mean, generally, if it's a project, they charge it separately from the retainer. And this would be a project.
Right.
We're going to have contracts to review down the road. And so probably Doug Galante, who's a great contract guy, will probably be working with us on this.
Okay. So as you consider the 6 or 7 properties that, that the work streams 2 would be considering, again.
Well, for that matter, I've already worked with the town attorney on some locations that are perhaps raise legal issues. And we certainly have zoning issues that we have to work with Lynn and.
Right.
So I just had a thought that escaped my mind.
Even if you get enough room to go through all the work.
Nick, do you have any questions
Yeah, I guess I'm a bit surprised we're not farther down the road with respect to the identification of the best place to put the new police department. And we do need a new police department for sure. That's
actually, I just remembered, Nick, that's a good point. Again, you'd think that with 500 acres, we'd be able to find 2.5 acres, right? I'd like to, tell the public, if anybody has 2.5 acres in town, we welcome the talking to the town. Ideally, we would find town property because then we don't have a land cost. But this is a major decision for the long term of the town. This is an essential building. I know a lot of people think South Avenue is the right location for it, but if the price tag comes in for that, something that's going to knock our socks off, we have to look at alternatives. Keep in mind, if we sold the South Avenue location to a developer, we've had conversation with the commercial real estate broker. We believe that's worth more value, has more value than we realized in terms of a residential development property. And I think, but this is a complex decision that we have to make as to what's the cost of renovating or building on South Avenue versus building a new building elsewhere. We did visit both the Bethel new police department and the brand new Newtown Police Department. One building was totally new, and the other one was they bought a commercial building and renovated it and expanded it. So again, I think we're going to be surprised at how much the cost will be with South Avenue, and I think we have to be prepared to look at alternatives. So, and it's something we can't rush.
No, we shouldn't rush it. Where is the police building committee on this? Have they already come to a preliminary determination? I know our police chief thinks we should rebuild at South Avenue.
Well, again, Leon's not, the whole point is that we have to evaluate all possible sites before we can narrow a list of things that would legally work and ones that, but I failed to mention another point. This decision ultimately is a decision for the Board of Selectmen and the Town Council, right. and probably the Board of Finance as well. But building any structure on town property is a town council decision, and if any group of laymen is going to just decide a location, it should be the Town Council and not a group of volunteers on the building committee.
I don't disagree. I guess I'm just, the thought of hiring not one but 2 consultants at some cost is
well,
unusual.
the idea would be also that down the road, if we decided to build a new building, we'd probably put both firms in competition and let them both make recommendations as to what they build on a new location. If we're going to do South Avenue, we're essentially going to get the same building with new guts and or a new facade, and that will be controversial. I think, like a lot of other building projects can become controversial in town.
Right. Okay.
So again, we're spending money that's already in the budget, and I move we approve this request to enter into 2 contracts, one with Jacunzi Humes and the other with Catherine Booz to do the work streams as I described.
Second here.
Further discussion? All in favor? Okay, let's move on to the library. Again, for For those who wish to comment, now would be the appropriate time. We received a number of emails. I and Kathleen, Nick, did you make the parking commission meeting yesterday? We're well aware of the comments from library on really both sides of the library. But I would, open it up to 2 or 3 minute comments by members of the public. If you raise your hand, Tucker, would you look for who's?
I will. There's somebody got a hand up.
Keith Simpson.
Thank you. So I had to unmute myself. I just very briefly like to say that I did read the section related to 1913 building, library building, and I'm encouraged by it. I think there's a very real possibility that both the old 1913 library building and the new library building can live very harmoniously together in the future. It just is a matter of some further creative thought, which I'm certainly prepared to contribute to that. And so I hope that that clause remains in the memorandum of understanding and gets adopted by the Board of Selectmen. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. Anyone else? Kimberly, Norton?
Yeah, hi. Good morning, everyone. First, item 1.08, the 1913 building, that really gives us a chance to come up with a plan. And really, I was talking to someone last night and saying 1913 is really the home of New Canaan. It's not a private house. It's a public building that people have been using for years. And we've really received an outpouring of support on Facebook, Instagram, and other places of people just really wanting that building to remain so that we can use it for lots of different reasons. And I concur with Keith that I think we can come up with a great plan that will be happy, that everyone will be happy about. So I just want to say thank you again for including that in the MOU.
If Irene Hendricks has raised her hand.
Hi. So I also wanted to comment that I thought it was helpful that we have an open door and open dialogue around 1913. I think there are different perspectives about the building. But to me, the fact that it's such an integral part of our downtown and the architectural significance of the building, I'm just excited at the possibility that there are ways that we can move forward to both have a new and world-class library as well as retain the building. Thank you.
Two other people who've raised their hands. I don't see you, but I saw 2 hands are up. Rose?
You got to unmute, Rose.
Okay. Good morning, Rose Rothbart. I just wanted to say, and I sent an email with the similar wording, that I was surprised and pleased to see section 108, the new 1913 building, in the public-private partnership agreement, the memo of understanding between the town and the library. I was actually additionally dismayed to read a comment in the New Canaanite that the library board is less than enthusiastic on this, that this section was in the MOU. I do hope that this may be a first step in our town government's recognition of the importance of such an integral visual and cultural feature in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Rose.
I don't see any others.
Okay, with that, let's launch into the library. So, for the past 4 or 5 months, we've been waiting to resolve the parking issue, which was the library had originally proposed to do underground parking as part of the project, which turned out to be a problem when their consultant, Langen, suggested that cars coming out onto Main Street, so close to Maple Street, and a traffic light on South Main and Cherry was a problem. So in discussions with John Goodwin of the Planning and Zoning Commission, we decided to hire a peer reviewer of that analysis of the traffic issue. So Michael Galante with somewhere in Hardesty and
Hanover.
Hanover.
Who the town has used for other parking and traffic issues, and had been working for a number of months because the planning and zoning rules don't define parking requirements for a library. And but working together, we finally got the consultants to both issue reports. Michael's recommendation is more conservative than the library's consultant, and we also had the library analyze every conceivable way of getting in or out of the library underground parking, and all of them turned out to be grossly expensive, over $100,000, and a space. And so we now have two. Anyway, so we decided that we have to have a parking plan that goes to planning zoning that planning and zoning will accept. And on the other hand, we also have something that's acceptable to the town. So the Parking Commission had a meeting yesterday and heard from the two consultants. We have developed a proposal which we believe planning and zoning will accept, and that is acceptable to the town, which essentially involves using the center lot because that's a very inefficient lot, always has been, and will enable the library to move forward with their plan, with a parking plan that they have to have in order to have a complete application by the end of this week. The town will be a co-applicant with the library since the parking is part of the parking plan. In order to move this forward to planning and zoning and also to the Board of Finance and the Town Council, we've been working on this MOU for 9 months, but the Town Council made it clear they would not approve an MOU until they saw what was presented to planning and zoning. So that's why the timing is now. The Board of Selectmen just wants to move this forward. I suspect this MOU will be further modified before it's finally approved. But with respect to the parking provisions, this board is responsible for deciding with the recommendation of the Parking Commission what to do with respect to parking. And so we have to at least move forward the parking provisions, but I propose we move forward the entire draft MOU. It's kind of an offer to the library. Obviously, it's not, I know it's not all acceptable to the library, but through the next phase with the Board of Finance and the Town Council, I believe the library can get to a point they have an acceptable MOU. So I would specifically note that it's not for this board to decide what happens to the 1913 building. That process will unfold in the next 2 months. And both P&Z and the Town Council have to make a decision. And if that's not resolved, I don't know how it's going to be resolved, but it's not going to be resolved by this board. The purpose of Section 108 was just to leave the issue open for resolution by those bodies. And you shouldn't assume, it really, you may be reading too much into it to say this board is advocating that solution. We're leaving the door open to the solution. Unless, so Kathleen and Nick, do you want to make comments about the process? We do have some late arriving suggestions to modify the draft that we posted. Libraries has several kind of technical changes we can either discuss or just agree to put into the draft we're approving today. So Kathleen and Nick, would you like to comment or?
Sure. If I may, maybe I'll start and so I'd like to make just a few comments on parking and then just a comment on the 1913 building, obviously respecting what you have already said, Kevin. So I want to also thank Keith Ritchie for the Parking Commission discussion, which we participated in. As I thought about it sort of overnight, and I have just a few questions, and I don't know who might be able to answer this. So one of the things I'd like to ask for consideration, that in addition to considering the parking spaces and so forth, that there's some reference to pedestrian safety. And this came up in the conversation yesterday. in terms of the ingress and egress of the parking lot will also be the ingress and egress of pedestrian flow for the patrons. So coming out of the parking lot, crossing Maple Street into the main entrance, as I understand it, it's going to be directly across from that entrance into the parking lot. And if I remember the aerial view, we currently have a crosswalk down to, again, looking down where the building, the library is to the north. The crosswalk is actually over to the right. It's not contiguous to the driveway, if you will, into the parking lot. So I've just asked that any reference in terms of in the MOU that not only is there consideration to the parking, but also to pedestrian safety. I don't know the answer, but I do know that there is should be some consideration given that people will be coming in and out. It is slightly different from the current parking situation on the library property in that the traffic only goes in one direction as people are coming, say, from the parking lot into the door of the library. So I think that is in several sections of would be under 107F and 107I, where in addition to the adequate to satisfy the parking needs, that include pedestrian safety. So that's just one comment. Second one is on monitoring. Wasn't quite sure of the 76 spaces that are being proposed for the library, who monitors whether or not someone is there in the parking lot that isn't a patron, or maybe spending far too long when they should be. Maybe they're using the train station or what have you. Is there who?
Catherine, let me address both of those before I turn to Tiger.
Sure.
So with respect to safety, that's one of the reasons we thought we should have reserved parking at the first 2 rows most close to the library, because when young families come in the morning with children, we didn't want them to have to walk to the back of a parking lot to walk through the parking lot through traffic. So that's one reason we wanted to have reserved spaces. The other thing is, I don't know what the rule is, Tiger, but I have this ongoing battle with Tiger as to why we can't lower the speed limit on some roads downtown, even especially Elm Street. I mean, what is it, 25 miles an hour? I mean, it drives me crazy to have people driving 25 miles an hour up Elm Street. But I would think that we could probably lower the speed limit on Maple Street to perhaps 10 miles an hour or something. In addition, I think this consultant for Langen yesterday mentioned the idea of having traffic calming lights or something at the pedestrian walkway. So I think safety is clearly one of the issues that we're trying to address with various means. And Tiger, do you want to address the speed limit issue on?
I'll address the pedestrian safety, which includes the speed limit. So Kathleen, to your point, it's an excellent point. We are considering, and we are in discussions with the library about either possibly a raised pedestrian walkway. There is somewhat of you would come up onto it, a table, so to speak, a pedestrian table there, which would then be a traffic calming measure. They suggested an RRFB, which is a rapid rectangular flashing beacon. We have those at the crossings on Weed Street near Irwin Park, and then at Sac School. So we're very much in agreement with that. So there are the thoughts as to we'll have to manage the pedestrian access while the library is during construction, but then post construction, it's understood that the driveway itself, the Sac School, will almost line up with the library. And then at that point in time, we can put in a pedestrian table and then some other amenities to have a safe crossing, so to speak. It's almost like it's a combined campus.
Yeah.
Kevin's point about dropping the speed limit for the MUTCD, the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, we can drop the speed limit by 5 miles per hour without a engineering study. Anything after that, we would have to have an engineering study. That's handled through the police commissioner. They are the legal traffic authority, and they would then set the speed limit. But we can certainly ask them right now for a 5 mile per hour reduction to 20, sign it accordingly. Anything lower than that, we would have to have a study and warrant it. As to the problem is that you can set the speed limit to whatever you want, but then people will drive what they consider to be the reasonable speed, right? That's the unfortunate thing. If we set it to 10, it doesn't mean that people will drive 10. It just means that they're going to still drive what they think is reasonable. But we are cognizant of it, and we're aware that, during construction specifically, because that's probably the busiest time, and then post construction is easy, we can build it, but during construction, to me, is the more concern.
As far as the monitoring of the spaces, Kathleen, keep on this will remain a municipal parking lot.
Yep.
The patrons have the right to park there. Not, the library has no rights over the spaces or how we enforce it. But since they will be reserved spaces, just as the library tried to enforce their 2-hour limit, we will enforce the 2-hour or 3-hour, probably 2-hour limit with our town parking department. There's a couple ways we could do that, but we haven't landed on the right. Tucker, would you want to remind me what the 2 ways are? One is to have people go to a meter and get the 2 first hours free and be able to add another hour or 2 by pay by phone or by going back to the meter. Or the other alternative would simply be 2-hour parking only, and the parking attendants would drive through 4 times a day, and if a car was there earlier and still there, they'd give them a ticket. So, but we haven't really landed on how we would do enforcement, but it would be the town's enforcement policy.
Okay, thank you. And then one last question on parking. I think I know the answer, but just, do we currently provide snow plowing for the library's parking?
No.
We do not, okay. Obviously, we will do for, and we do now, for Center Street, right, okay.
That's why they're paying, I'd like to actually mention a related subject. We created a bit of a problem by experimenting with free parking for town workers that work at the restaurants and retail downtown. It turns out to be spectacularly successful. And I think we think we solved the problem by giving free parking to people who work downtown. That would not include the library staff. The library is agreeing that their staff, which is 25 or 26 people, would always be off site and not permitted to park in the center lot unless we make unless we agree to waive that in the future. But because of what we did with free parking, it's really made it impossible to accommodate the farmers market at the center lot. And that's a discussion that I'm surprised no one commented on in the public comments, but we are going to accommodate the farmers market probably at the lumberyard or at the playhouse. We definitely want to keep it downtown. The suggestion to move it to Waveney Park is probably one that be controversial and one that probably unnecessary because people want the farmers market downtown. But again, the town's decision to make free parking available, which is a good working solution for downtown, is what has caused the problem with farmers market, not the library dedication of 76 spaces. Nick?
Yeah, so there are 2 issues here, right? First, the parking issue, which is a relatively new issue, and I think it's unfortunately late in the game, very late in the game, it became clear that the whole concept of underground parking was untenable. So we had to come up with a solution. Luckily, the solution was literally across the street, and I think it is a good solution. That lot has historically been very underutilized, and it makes a lot of sense to utilize that for library parking. I agree with Kathleen. There's going to be a lot of people walking across that street, so we need to make it safe. Obviously, the second issue is the gorilla in the room, which is the disposition of the 1913 building. I have said in the past, and will say again, I am supportive of the library's plans as they are today. However, with respect to the 1913 building, I understand that there's a significant group of folks in town who are really supportive of keeping that building. What this language does as a lawyer is it's really a placeholder. It provides additional time for supporters of the 1913 building to move forward to fund a plan, which I think may be difficult to do. But I actually have a couple of questions. And by the way, I think it's very important to understand that both P&Z and town council either one of those groups can say no to the 1913 building based upon the language that's in the new section. But I have a question for Lisa and the folks in the library who are on this call today. One of the questions, two questions. One question is it possible to complete the new library without demolishing the 1913 building based upon the plans? Because this is what this envisions if you read this paragraph. And the second question I have is, do you believe that this provision could impact current fundraising?
Lisa?
So I think that's a very big set of questions, Nick. As to impacting fundraising, I think ambiguity is not the friend of fundraising. I will say that. I will defer to others who have much greater experience than me, but all advice I've been given and what we have seen, even since that was made public yesterday, is that ambiguity is not the friend of fundraising. As to the process, I don't have the legal expertise on this. However, in terms of what is actually there on the site, our intention is to continue to operate in the existing building until the new building is built. So I don't think that fully answers your question, but I'm not sure how else to answer it.
So
did Nick freeze?
and have the 1913 building still in place.
Nick, we lost a lot of what you said. You need to ask that question again. You froze.
Sorry. So it is possible, Lisa, to finish essentially the new library, keep the 1913 building in place.
Our plan contemplates construction of a new facility, moving into the new facility, and then taking down the old facility.
Okay.
I don't think I have another more fact-based answer to your question than that.
Okay.
I think the point you're getting at, Nick, though, is that the library property belongs to the library. The town can make an offer to fund a share of the capital cost, and we can agree to cooperate on parking, but we can't dictate what happens on the property. But unless we come to and ultimately, again, I think planning is, I'm not sure where planning and zoning can come out on this, because they're being presented a plan that they have to either approve or not approve. So I don't know whether it's the planning and zoning or the town council ultimately that decides this, but the purpose of as you said, was a placeholder, is to move this forward so that resolution can be achieved in the next 60 days, probably.
I think Kim has her hand up.
Hi, I just like to speak to Nick's question. I know if people know that we have met with, the group of people that want to keep 1913, have had 2 meetings with the library, and we've tried to work this out so that we don't waste all of your time and go through boards and, drag this on, but we have not been able to come to any agreement other than the library agreeing to think about moving the building. So I did some research with Payne Movers, which is one of the 3 largest New England movers of commercial buildings, and spoke to them. They looked at an aerial view of the building. They looked at the street, Main Street, with all the trees and how tight it was to be able to move a building like that. And basically it's prohibitively expensive and would most likely result in the crumbling of the building. So that's really not a viable option. But I wanted to just say that I concur with Lisa that ambiguity is the enemy of fundraising. So for us to be able to come up with a funding for 1913, we really need some kind of, first, I know you want a plan from us, but we need some kind of commitment that the building will be retained on site. and then we can fundraise. And we're happy to fundraise with the library to come up with a plan and get our supporters to pitch in for a new library as well as retaining the old library. But unfortunately, we have not had cooperation from the library board, who we wrote to in August asking them to reconsider, in addition to the other administration in the library. So that's why we're in the situation we're in today. Thank you.
Kevin, with the new section, would, you know, the terms viable and funded, is it clear? I don't think it is clear that that funding would not include a town component, because the town is, you know, providing 10 million, or hopefully will be providing $10 million for the new library. I would not be in favor of, you know, providing additional funding. I mean, I think that's all you're going to get for this capital project. So I assume when you talk about funding, that's private funding.
Well, Nick, regardless of whatever that says, we're just moving this on to the next body.
I know. As a lawyer, Kevin, we're both lawyers. I mean,
this is not a final document. I think
no, it's a draft document, and by the way, it's a two-way street. We have this is an agreement, and the other side, if you will, the other counterparty, the counterparty, has a say in this document as well.
No, that's why, we have to be respectful of the library's wishes and respectful of proponents of maintaining the 1913 building. So I don't know how this is going to be resolved, but it has to move forward. And I'm a little, here we are, almost March. And if the library is going to get a shovel in the ground this summer, we have to continue to move this forward. So I don't think we should get hung up with the wording today, because by the time this gets to the Board of Finance and Town Council, they may want to change it. And Planning and Zoning has to make a decision on a proposed plan. But they can't make a decision unless we move forward with the parking agreement. And so that's one thing we're approving today, is the paragraph on parking.
Right.
The Parking Commission recommended this plan yesterday with their meeting. What I propose to do is let's make the changes that the library's attorney has suggested to the final document. We will move forward to the Board of Finance and the Town Council. I don't know whether the Board of Finance could possibly take this up before they vote on the budget on March 4th. It's conceivable, because they're going to be in the same position. They just want to move it forward to the Town Council. And I think whether the Town Council takes this up in March or April, we just have to keep moving it forward. And somehow, some way, we're going to get this issue decided by the next 60 days.
Yeah, again, these are two separate issues. We would have this parking issue regardless of whether the 1913 building was there or not.
That's right.
It's just about parking. But again, I just want to go on record as saying I read viable and funded as privately funded, as opposed to additional town resources.
Personally, I wouldn't, I think, I don't think we have to address that today. Kathleen.
So I'm just going to make two comments on the 1913, but I saw that Ted and I think Eileen both raised their hand. I don't know if you want to comment first or.
Ted, Eileen, go ahead, Ted. Ted is the newly appointed judge, Superior Court judge, and congratulations to Ted.
Thank you. To Mr. Williams' comment, obviously the library plans to use the old building until the new one's completed. So physically, what you talk about is possible, but the problem is Planning and Zoning has to approve a solution, approve a plan before we can start anything. So this will be resolved by then. It's not going to be an open. I don't believe it can be an open issue, and we can start construction on one side of it. So, and the only thing is we have been there have been a number of discussions, and the library intends to put forward a very articulated reason why it's not proposing to save the 1913 building. But the problem is you can't begin your construction until you have zoning approval for the entire site.
So that's the answer.
So I think
That's
that
the
will
answer.
be resolved in that process, right?
Eileen, did you want to say something? You have to unmute. You have to unmute.
I think Ted pointed out part of what I was going to say. And the other part was just to talk about fundraising, having been involved in fundraising. You know, our donors were taken aback a bit by the New Canaanite article that came out yesterday, just because there was they didn't understand how that headline came about. We reached out to them, but just to point out that, you know, it does make fundraising very difficult when there's ambiguity about what's going to happen and what our funders have basically put money behind to this point.
Yeah, I would comment, and I think Nick and Kathleen agree with me. There's no question that we support the library, and we want this project to move forward. I wish we had this discussion in October rather than almost March, because it's very critical that we move forward. And again, the Board of Selectmen is just moving this issue on to another body to decide. We can't decide this issue today.
So Kevin, I just want to also add, as a selectman, I also support the library. I have supported the library through my role on the Board of Finance, the Town Council, and now the Board of Selectmen. I will say that the amount of emails that we've all received, there's a common theme, and that is that everybody supports the library. Whether you're supporting the 1913 preservation or the new project, I think everybody's in favor of supporting the library, and I do too. I mean, both as a selectman, but also as Eileen mentioned, my husband and I were early donors to the new project. That said, I also am supportive of finding, you know, some way of a common consensus that it addresses not just a group, and maybe we reference it as a group. I mean, it is indeed, I've seen a groundswell of support of people wanting to preserve as best we can the 1913 facade or building. And I say that in terms of the language that's currently in there. And again, it's a draft, and it's, again, you know, not for me to change the language, but really it is the property of the library. The library owns the land, owns the buildings, et cetera. Yes, we are supporting it. I'd like to see the library come up with a plan, and in doing so, I suggest that, subject to prior action as written here by the P&Z Commission or the Town Council, you might want to consider adding "or the library themselves wanting to perhaps address the, you know, no longer having ambiguity for fundraising issues, might want to think about, is there a resolution or an opportunity to address the concerns of more broadly all of our constituents. So I just throw that out there as a thought. That's a personal perspective. Again, supporting the library and the project, want to see it move ahead. It's been around for this project idea and concept has been around for over a decade. So it is time to move forward. Again, I support and have supported the new project, but I'd also like to see some way that the library actually addresses ways in which the current 1913 building may be preserved in some way that supports the library's efforts and of course the entire community. So just throw that out there. Thank you very much.
Kimberly?
Yes, thank you for that, Kathleen. We couldn't agree more that it would be wonderful if the library could figure out a use for the 1913 building. My caution in considering that is that currently the library website talks about taking some stones and remnants from the 1913 building and scattering them on the lawn that they're planning. So if that language does go into the MOU, I would strongly encourage that it includes the full preservation of the building, not you know, stones scattered around like Stonehenge on the lawn. Thank you.
I propose that we, you have the memo with the additional changes that have been requested by the library's attorney, Kathleen and Nick. I propose we incorporate those, and we're voting on the MOU as presented with these additions. And in particular, the paragraph on parking. I mean, I don't anticipate the parking paragraph will change further with the other bodies, but we have to at least be approving the parking provisions today so the library has a plan that they can take to P&Z by the end of this week with an application that we're a co-applicant on. So I'm sort of crafting a motion that says I'm moving that we approve the MOU as amended by the comments that we have on our tablets or by memo from Ted O'Hanlon. And we would in particular approve the parking provisions, which are integral to the P&Z application by the library this week. So are you in agreement with that motion? Do I have a second?
Second here.
Further discussion? Kathleen?
Only, sorry, one item. Again, sorry to be a stickler in this. If under section F is adequate to satisfy the parking needs and pedestrian safety, if you'd be kind enough to consider putting that in. That's the only change that I would suggest. And I have reviewed all of the library's attorneys' changes, and I agree with all of them.
Ted or Lisa, do you, you're okay? So with that, do I have a?
We don't get a vote, do we, Kevin?
No, but I want to make sure you had a comment. I think in particular, the most important thing people realize, we're moving this on to the Board of Finance.
So we agree absolutely with the parking provision. We're glad to see the comments that we submitted included. Obviously, we have not had any time to review the new clause, and we'll get back to you, or obviously Board of Finance on that, since we haven't had an opportunity to input on that one.
Yeah, and I'm hoping the Board of Finance will take this up with their budget vote, because it's important that we continue to move this forward so that it can be resolved in March or April at the latest by the town council and P&Z. So all in favor of everything we just said?
Aye.
The motion as presented. Thank you. Okay, that concludes the library MOU discussion. We just have a couple items. Item 7 is the appointment of a vacancy in the Board of Assessment Appeals. Susan Angle, who we're all familiar with, has agreed to step forward and assume this duty, which requires she go to work in March with the other two assessors, the other two Board of Assessment Appeal members. So I move we approve Susan Angle to a term ending November 2nd, 2021.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? It's unanimous. Let's take up, Linda, would you explain the Municipal Advisory Services Agreement?
Yes. So the town, by state law, every time we go out and issue bonds or refund existing bonds, we do need to have a registered municipal advisor advising the town on the structure and the process, together with bond counsel. Because of our tax exempt status, bond counsel is also required to advise the town on bond issues. And therefore we have ongoing contract with those individuals. In this particular instance, our longtime municipal advisor, William Lindsay, he advises a majority of municipal governments in Connecticut, and we're fortunate to work with him. He is switching firms, and he's switched like 3 or 4 firms since working with us. And therefore, what this agreement is, because we value his advice, we're essentially retaining the services of Bill Lindsay, but with the new firm Unistat. And so the agreement was reviewed by the town attorney. They did ask that we enhance the insurance requirements that he initially presented. He has done that. And that is the agreement that you have in front of you. It mirrors the agreements that we've had in the past, but it's essentially just saying that we are engaging with him with a new firm that he is now working with. We are currently working on a refunding and a new funds issue, and he has been working with us through the transition as well.
Question, Kathleen?
I just say that I worked with Bill Lindsay back in the day, and yeah, he's a great guy, and I think it's smart that you follow him in terms of his advice. And I assume that all of the other assessment of Munistat is Linda, you're comfortable with the company, and you know that they're going to be in business for a while, and you've done your due diligence on them.
Yes, we have. We're comfortable with them. I've worked with Bill Lindsay even when I was with the city of Norwalk. He still advises the city of Norwalk. He speaks to our professional conferences. Many of my peers use him as advisor. So yes, I'm confident with his service and Munistat.
Any questions, Nick?
None here.
Okay, I move we approve the contract with Munistat for municipal advisory services as set forth on our tablets. Second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? That's unanimous. Tax overpayments on our tablets? Is this a vote, Tucker? Yes. Okay.
Yep. Yes.
I move that we approve the tax overpayments on our tablets.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? That's unanimous. Approval of legal fees on our tablets. I move we approve the legal fees on our tablets. Second.
Second.
Kathleen, discussion? All in favor? That's unanimous. Contracts. Any questions about the contracts under $10,000 on our tablets? Finally, we'll move on to Selectmen's comments. You heard my outcall last night. We're very pleased with the virus is sort of under control. In New Canaan, remarkably, the state of Connecticut positivity rate is dropped down to the low 2s. We tested last week 201 people or something and had 0 positives. So we're happy with where we are. Still reminding people that it's important to maintain vigilance, and especially with respect to getting together with large groups. The vaccination process is going very well. We did 300 last week. We're going to do another 300 tomorrow at Lapham. We had 800 people sign up last night. There was some confusion. The sign-up form in the outcall email and on the town website is for anyone over 55 now. We should finish 65-year-olds tomorrow, 65 to 74. So the vaccination process is going very well, and in New Canaan and in Stamford. Stamford is doing 9,000 a day, so that's been a great help to us. Finally, I would like to mention that we are very happy to have received word from AT&T that they're signing on to the new proposed cell tower and tower at 1837 Ponus Ridge, and we didn't expect that so soon, but it's funded in their budget, and we're very happy to move that forward to the Siting Council. That's all I have. Kathleen or Nick?
Yeah, with respect to vaccinations, I just would remind everybody that you can still transmit the disease, COVID, if you've been vaccinated, based upon the latest research. So you still got to wear your mask. You still got to take precautions.
Kathleen.
I did have one other question. I've gotten some communications from some constituents, one of whom was mentioning in terms of 1837 that there was a previous petition from, I don't know, neighbors, I guess. And is that available to the public? Can I get a copy of that?
Yes.
Okay. That must have been done maybe a year before my time anyway. So
2 years ago.
2 years ago. Okay. Thank you.
And we have a special meeting scheduled for this afternoon.
That we're still going to have that.
Yes.
Is that executive session, Kev?
It'll be executive session only.
Yeah.
Anything else? I think we've covered it, and happy to move this forward. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day. Hopefully no snow in the next few days.
Adjourn, Kevin.
Thank you.
Kevin.
Thanks, everyone.
Oh, motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All right. Thank you.
See you later.
Thank you.
Thank you.